Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Sean Slater.
And I'm his sister Caroline.
And today we start watching minute 7, where it begins with Miles getting his luggage out of his dad's cruiser and ends with Miles sitting down in class.
I titled this minute, I Love You. I know.
Yeah, that whole back and forth, that it was, when I first saw that in the trailer, it gave me a good laugh. Every time I see that scene, I always laugh.
It fails to make me laugh anytime I see it. Or it fails to not make me laugh.
Yeah.
My bad. It fails to not get a laugh out of me.
Yeah.
Every time I see it. That's what I meant to say.
And I can remember when I was watching the original trailer, laughing at that, and a lot of trailers for bad movies these days seem to always put all of their best jokes in the trailer. And, because this is such a good joke and it was in the trailer, I was really worried that this movie was going to be like, oh, it has all of 4 jokes and this is one of them. The lead up to it in the trailer wasn't really there, so it didn't have as much of an impact as it does in the movie.
It's so much funnier in the movie.
It has more meaning, feeling behind it too, because it's coming straight after them having a little spat and getting
you get a bit of their relationship.
Yeah, it being tense, and then his dad's like, I do love you, kind of that reminder that kids need sometimes.
I do need to talk about this because I noticed this as I was watching it. When his dad first gets on the speaker at 17 seconds go, you gotta say I love you back, and the switches to Miles turning around like, Dad, are you serious? You see all of the kids in the background, their faces look so confused as to what's happening. Like, what's going on? Why is there a cop talking to this kid? And it gets better because then there's that big shot of them going back and forth. You can see the heads of their
bouncing
audience
back and
going
forth
between the two. And it's such a small detail, but I love small details in animated movies, and it made that bit even funnier to me because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an actual spectacle.
Yeah, and the fact that they all turn in unison, it's just
even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, the scene, I think part of the reason that I like it so much is I always reply to Mom in that same exact way of whenever she says I love you, at the end of, when we're done talking on the phone or I'm leaving or something, she's always like, I love you, and I always reply, I know. And I started doing it without realizing that it was a Star Wars quote. I think it had just, permeated my subconsciousness so much that I just felt like that was the right response to make.
That's the proper way to say I love you back to someone.
Yeah, and I started saying it without consciously being like, I'm going to quote Star Wars to my mother. And then it took me, I think I was saying it to her for 3 or 4 years before she was like, are you quoting Star Wars on purpose? And then it clicked to me oh, I guess I am. No, it's not on purpose.
It's I am quoting Star Wars, but it's not on purpose. Yeah, I think we were rewatching Star Wars or something, and Mom was in the room, and she's kind of like, are you doing that on purpose? Or something like we saw something Star Wars related that made her think of it.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason I named this minute I Love You, I Know. Because it is such a thing in our family. And also because Miles is dad, and Miles also has their own little mini, I love you, Miles. Yeah, I know, Dad. Are the lines.
Thankfully, Mom doesn't make me, doesn't prevent me from leaving until I say I love her back.
She doesn't pull out a megaphone and
No,
go,
she doesn't.
say I love you back. Boy, you would have hated her in high school if she did that every time you were trying to get to class. Maybe that's why I always questioned how you could stand having Mom be around your friends. Maybe I thought she did that to you. It's like, did she like she has to make you say I love you before you get to class? Like, how could you stand that? That's so embarrassing.
No, I just took the long way around when I had class
you
on
did.
either side of her. I would just deliberately not walk past her room.
Yeah. Meanwhile, when I got to high school, I'm like, no, I'm stopping by her room at literally every chance I get.
I noticed there's another taxi. A taxi. When Miles's dad is talking to him, telling him to say I love you back. Another of the green taxis rolls by, and it has the Custer in Purgatory ad on the top of it again. So that book must have a very big marketing budget to be on multiple taxis.
That yeah, especially in New York.
Yeah. And I also didn't
I really want that book to actually get published.
Yeah.
Like, this really was just one giant pull. It's like, we're going to put this in the movie twice. And then when the book comes out, people are going to subconsciously be like, you know what? Yeah, I want to read that for some reason.
I also didn't realize that the green taxis were real. I thought they were just like, oh, we can't use the yellow cabs, so we're going to make them green. But
no, because I think you even see a few yellow cabs in the movie at some point. No, they're real. They're more common outside of, like, Times Square in Manhattan.
Yeah, so I looked up what they were, and they're called borough taxis, and they were specifically, so they're really new. Like, they only came around in, I think I saw, like, 2013-ish, 2011, 2013 was when they were instituted, and it was because there was a study done that I think like 90% of the yellow cab taxis pickups happened in Manhattan, and the other 3% were outside of that. And so they were like, oh, there's this, the other boroughs aren't getting enough love from the yellow taxis, so they started doing the green taxis, and they issued a set number of license for those. And the borough taxis are allowed to do pickups everywhere in New York City except south of East 96th and West 110th Street in Manhattan. And I'm guessing they can drop off in Manhattan. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm sure they could drop off in Manhattan.
But versus the yellow cabs who can pick up anywhere they want. They have no restrictions on which boroughs they can operate in and whatnot.
They just don't go to the boroughs.
Yeah.
And I can say I mostly used Uber when I was up there, and I didn't go to too many of the boroughs just because I was there for school. So I didn't really have too much time to go exploring outside of Manhattan. My school was right in Manhattan, so I did a lot of my stuff there. But when I was in the boroughs, they are more spread out than, like, Manhattan is. Like, Manhattan is, like, you go down 2 blocks and you've passed, like, 20 things. But, like, in the boroughs, things are a little bit more spread out, more distant. So the cabs out there are very helpful because it's like, oh, it's, like, 3 blocks away. And it's like, that's a different block distance than it is in Manhattan.
Yeah. And another ad I saw was on the bus that drives past, also drives past the cruiser when there's a shot from inside of it.
I did see the ad, but I couldn't make it out what it was. Did you get it?
Yeah, it's an ad for a news station called the 3 a.m. News Station. I couldn't. It was out of focus enough that I couldn't pick up what the tagline was, but it was more blank, and then more blank. So they have more of a lot of things. But I'm really curious, like, is this a news station that starts at 3 a.m., only airs in the 3 a.m. hour? Is it only on the air, for an hour? Or why is it, or is it like, 8:30 a.m. radio, and this just happens to be 3 a.m. radio? Like, that's the wavelength.
I like to picture that
just
the
a
news
very
they
low-
report. I like to picture the news they report is just like the weird things that happen at night. Like every once in a while they report like, okay, this is something serious, but most of the time it's like, Florida man
Yeah.
marries crocodile after kidnapping it for like, or something like weird like that, but like for New York, and it's like this just happened at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's only news that happens at 3 a.m.
I love this idea of this news that we've created.
News that happened at, there's probably like a 4 a.m. news station too. Like, there's 24 different news stations, and they each cover a separate like events that happened in a specific hour. Oh, and back to what you were saying about just the back and forth, when after Miles says, "Yeah, I know," and starts to walk up, and when his dad throws on the lights, that's a really cool way that they have. Like I really liked the way they framed Miles and his dad in this one again, just because you have his dad just like perched up on his shoulder like the little good angel, being like, "You gotta say I love you back."
Say I love you back. Say I love you.
and-
I love you.
And it's almost like he's having, you expect another, like a little demon popping up on his,
Little
on
devil
his left
him.
shoulder. Yeah, just being like, "You don't need to say it. You're too cool for
Are you
that."
serious? Are you serious for this? Are you like he's really doing this right now?
Yeah. That angel and demon works especially well because the Custer in Purgatory just drove by.
That's what Custard Purgatory is about. You have a devil on your side who's like a cupcake, and then on the other side, the angels is the custard.
Yeah.
I have no idea how this guy writes. That totally might be like in the ballpark of how he writes. It might be totally off base. I don't know. Going a little earlier into that, because I do want to bring this up. There's a repeat frame when Miles is getting his stuff out of this car. It's in the background. There's a student walking to the school. I think he's like carrying like a crate or something. And Miles is getting his back out and it switches to his dad. And that's, I think, when his dad goes, "I love you, Miles." And when it switches back to Miles, that kid traveled back in time a little bit. It just moved forward again. And it's like, oh, he went into a tiny loop there. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, and it's just that student at... Oh, no, it is all of them, I think. Everybody except Miles.
He's
goes
the most
back.
noticeable. He's the most noticeable.
Yeah, no, it's definitely... Because the kid in the foreground... The kid in the foreground also does the same thing, where he makes it to, like, the edge of the car door and then snaps back to the front of the car door. So, yeah, it looks like... But then Miles... he doesn't snap back in time at all, so it is interesting. It almost looks like they ran out of stuff to animate. They're like, "Oh crap, we got to the end of what we animated and we still have extra stuff to do."
I think it's more of a timing layout thing, because I've seen this in a few, not just animated movies, but even in some shows. So what they'll do is very similar to how they do fight scenes in movies, which we talked about in a previous minute. But they kind of just looped it back a little bit to help... How do I want to word this? They looped it back a little bit, mostly, I think, just to help timing for when Miles turns and walks away. Because depending how they animated this sequence, they, it might have, like, they have already had a setup. Like, they might have had that big crowd scene first, and then they realized when animating that close-up of Miles that, well, it's like, oh crap, the way we have them walking, they wouldn't be at the position they would have been. So they just skipped him back a little bit to make it a little more fluid, if that makes sense how I just explained that.
Yeah, I don't know if that actually really matters, though, because he doesn't, like, interact with anybody in the background. Like, you close the door, and then it cuts to his dad again, so, like, they would have been able to just, move people around. And then, like, the next scene you get is everybody, on either side, like, the walkway is clear and whatnot. But I bet what it was they just added that scene in. Like, they didn't have that fully, storyboarded out yet, and they were like, oh, maybe we should cut back to Miles here, and they had already animated the background, and it's like, just instead of having to re-render the whole scene again, and like, because the way I understand that they do this is they're fully 3D modeled, like it is a 3D scene that everybody's in, so they'd have to re-render all of that, and they only had like 5 seconds of it, so I kind of just this scene's a second longer, just rewind the bit that we already did by a second, and play it again, and no, but like normal people won't see this in the movie. It's only briefly on there, and your focus is on Miles, who isn't repeating actions, so you don't really notice the stuff in the background.
That's also possible, and it could have even also, another theory is that they had the kids walk off, and then when they cut back, they realize it looks empty. And they're like, that empty space looks weird. Have it repeat, which might even be more possible.
Yeah, and then Miles, makes his way into the school, and we get the first interior shot.
I want to actually talk about this super quick. When we first get up, I notice it's a parallel to seeing his friends on the streets. But if you remember when he's like talking with his friends on the streets earlier, when he's walking by Brooklyn Middle, he's very relaxed, very chill, like getting good back and forth and stuff. Where on this one, you see him like take a breath. He's more tense, he's less relaxed, and every time he tries to talk to someone, he's either getting little response or absolutely no response at all.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the responses he does get are just like mocking back at him, and no one really like tries to be friends with the new kid, which makes me think like I was curious what grades Vision covers, because like is it like an 8 through 12? Is it a traditional middle school, so 6 through 8? And so like what grades does the charter school cover? Because have the rest of the students been together for 3 years at this point, 6 years, 8 years together, and so it's just like, oh, it's the new kid being weird again.
That was the new kid's dad doing things. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool parallel of just showing like how uncomfortable Miles is in this school.
Yeah.
Like you see a little bit in the car in the previous minute, where he's talking like, why can't I just go back to Brooklyn Middle? And it sort of goes like what we were talking about with the whole, like, I think this school is elitist, and I'd rather be with the school with the people, of Miles just like not really wanting to get out of his comfort zone. And this is a good shot of showing him like, this is just how uncomfortable he is. Like he's pretty awkward. He's trying to be himself, but it's just not. He's not getting good responses. It's a cool way to just show him like he's a fish out of water in this school.
Yeah, it's but he does like, it is interesting to see him like try, because like a lot of times when you try to set up these sort of like in movies and stories where they're setting up the like fish out of water, kid doesn't want to be where they are, usually they're just like sullen and in on themselves, and they don't really like try to interact with the other students, whereas here he's like, hey, I'm trying to be friends.
I think that kind of helps. I wish more fish out of water stories did that, because I don't feel, like you said, like they're usually recluse, or like they try once and then they're done. Yeah. Or here he's trying a few times, and I appreciate saying that's like a normal person response, I feel. Like, yeah, the other one is too, but we see it so common, and I'm like, I don't think that, like, I know a bunch of kids who like were moved or like had to get to a new school or something, and they were more like Miles, trying. So it's nice to see this fish out of water actually try.
Yeah. So another thing I have is just some of the stuff you see on the walls in the background of Vision is when he first enters, on the side of the wall you see a sign that just says no vape, VATE. Oh. I don't know what that is, is very
don't think-
confusing.
Is it supposed to be Vate, or maybe it's supposed to be Vape?
No, it's definitely a T.
It's definitely because I thought
Yes.
it was saying something vote. To be honest.
Yeah, that's when,
No
when you
vote.
first like scanned by it, because it flashes by relatively quickly, and I was like, no
Yeah.
voting, what? And then but
No voting. This
it's-
is not a democracy.
It
This
says
is a
no vape.
dictatorship.
And at first I thought like, oh, maybe it wraps around the edge of the wall, but then like looking closer, it doesn't. So I have no idea what Vate is.
Well, I can tell you this: Vate is apparently a stock brand for Elevate, for the Elevate Brands Incorporated. Maybe they just don't want that covered.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that popped up. No Vate is a fruit punch tablet. Apparently, it's a vitamin supplement, and it's clearly 2 words.
Maybe that's what it is then. You know, they're encouraging their kids, the kids, to eat vitamin supplements.
Maybe.
But you know, I want to give a shout out to Andy, who won the Brooklyn Academy Academic Award. He's the,
Heard that. Go, Andy.
yeah. So you know, good job, Andy. And then when it pans up a little bit further, you briefly see a bunch of different flags on the wall. And
I did notice those.
I'm assuming it's the country of origins of the various students, and so I just wanted to go through them really quickly.
Oh, please. That sounds awesome. That came out more sarcastic than I meant it. I'm
just
like
wanna
genuinely
double
interested.
check-
That just came
yeah.
out very sarcastic. And I'm like, it's not what my intention was.
So from left to right, we have Canada, Japan, Brazil, the Netherlands, Turkey, Germany, France, Italy, some country that I don't know of. It looks like it's a Nordic country, but none of the countries with Nordic crosses on them have that single red stripe through the center of it. So I'm guessing it's just a fictional country that they have that, Marvel and DC are known for making up countries to not accidentally aggravate other real countries. So guessing they have, maybe some little island nation up in the north. And then Sweden, the Netherlands again. So they must have a very large Dutch population.
They just really love the Netherlands.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, Netherlands. Remember the founders from the Netherlands?
Maybe.
It's like extra pride.
Yeah. It does balance it out because the Netherlands is both the fourth from the left and the fourth from the right. And then the last 3 are Greece, Jamaica, and the United Kingdom. But yeah, the red, white, and blue one with the Nordic cross design is intriguing. I want to know more, but I wasn't able to find anything on that one specifically.
Yeah, I did notice the flags. I'm just not good enough to figure those out.
Yeah, I was able to get the Netherlands. I had to look up. I had to double check that one because I wasn't familiar. And the fictional one I looked up, and when I was going through them, I guessed them right, but I had to double check to make sure I didn't have there weren't other countries similar for the Italian and French flags. They were like my first guesses, and then
You should
I had
know
a
the
gut
Italian flag, Sean.
I should. It was more I wanted to make sure that it wasn't like there wasn't a duplicate flag of some like something that wasn't at a national level that also had that same thing, and it might be like, oh, this is the flag of this, some French state, or something smaller.
Okay, I'll give you some credit for that. Although I would have been very ashamed if you had to look up the Irish flag at any point.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to do that.
Good, because that
Yes, although
shame on you.
I do always it's who do they share the flag with? Not share it. It's there's an African nation.
Oh, is there an African nation that has a very similar flag to the Irish flag?
It's instead of being okay. So the flag of the Ivory Coast, instead of being green, white, orange, it's orange, white, green.
Oh, that's
so,
like, you just flip that flag upside down and you got it.
Yeah, so it's, if people from Ireland, when they're in distress out on sea, they have to be really careful not to be mistaken for just someone coming from the Ivory Coast.
Oof. Yeah, that's dangerous. Woof.
Yeah. So I always have to double check those on the order to make sure that that it goes green,
That's
white,
fair.
orange versus, or
That's
green,
fair.
white, red. Yeah, so I always like seeing flags. Flags are cool.
That's very cool.
And
Flags
so,
are cool. They are pretty cool. They are.
it's always neat seeing like how diverse the academy is. Like, you have 9 European nations, an Asian nation, a Caribbean nation, a South American nation, and a Middle Eastern, European, Asian nation, wherever Turkey is, an Asia Minor nation.
Well, it's cool too because like you can see it in the classes as well. Like you can see how diverse, like through the students. It's like, oh yeah, this is a very diverse school, which makes sense because it's Brooklyn. Did you have anything else? Oh, did you want to talk about the shoes?
What shoes?
Miles, your shoes are untied?
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, you can, go ahead and bring up the shoes.
So, okay. So, it's actually brought up twice in this minute. When he's entering the school after he finally says, I love you to his dad goes, that's a copy, and you can kind of hear, and tie your shoes. Then when he's in the school after he's talked with a few kids, a girl taps him on the shoulder, and he's like, yeah? He's like, your shoes are untied. He's like, I know. It's a choice. And there's a few things I want to bring up. First off, choice is brought up again. Like we talked about in the previous episode, Miles not having a choice, and then it's like, nah, I choose to leave my shoes untied. So it's like a small thing he gets to choose.
Yeah, I hadn't actually really thought of it that way. I thought of it more like, I was always like, oh, it's just Miles having his fashion choice. But
there's that too. There's that too.
I think of it. It sounds, when you brought it up again, it really felt like it's him trying to take control of something in his life when it feels like he increasingly doesn't, when he increasingly has less and less control. Because this is the third time in the movie in the first 7 minutes that the fact that his shoes are untied either comes up or plays a role. Because he trips over his lace, which is what causes him to get picked up by his dad. And yeah, it is funny. They're like, yo, your shoe's untied. Normally that's something that people would be like, oh, thank you, and tie their shoes. He's like, no, I know, I'm doing this on purpose. This is me being me.
Well, and it still ties in with like what you first thought, like it's a fashion choice. Well, people make fashion choices, and even through history, the choice of fashion has made giant statements, political statements, even just like activist rights. Like this is always a pretty
pants.
Women wearing pants. Well, like there's that, but one thing I always like to bring up, but I'll bring up the pants thing too, is in the 1920s when women started cutting their hair. That was a huge choice for women, because even then, not many women actually cut their hair. They would do faux bobs because long hair was so identified and associated with being feminine and being a woman that having an actual bob, like cutting your hair like that, it was like, oh, you're a man now. So like just that choice alone, and women raising their skirts or wearing heels, things like that, were choices, and they helped push things along for women's rights. And then, like you said, women wearing pants. Who was it? Katharine Hepburn. She never wore skirts. Like, she wore pants. And it was it was controversial. It was for her own comfort. It was political. It was all sorts, like she never wore a skirt or a dress. That might not be true, but she's mostly known for wearing a pantsuit. She's the reason it's acceptable now for women to wear pants. One of the reasons. She's a big reason. And it's still made today. Well, a good modern example is Billy Porter. For those who don't know, Billy Porter is an actor. He has had quite a stage career. More notably and more mainstream, I will say, is he's currently starring in FX's Pose. And he is a gay black man, but he wears dresses. And he loves wearing dresses. If you look him up, you will find his red carpet looks. And they're usually ball gowns, heels. He always comes up in something over the top for the Met Gala. But of course, that's what the Met Gala is all about. But he's just like, well, why is it okay for women to wear pants, but why can't a man wear a dress and it be totally fine? And that's sort of his stance. He's like, I just like wearing dresses. That's what it is. He looks fabulous. Personal opinion. But that's like, it's that idea of it's like, no, I just like wearing dresses. That's what I want to wear. Why does it matter? But like, to go back, to bring it back around, for many people, fashion is their way of making a choice. So Miles saying his shoe is a choice. Yes, it's a fashion choice, but it's also him taking some control in his life that he otherwise doesn't have.
Yeah. And then at the very end of the scene, we get a couple seconds of him entering the classroom. And when I first heard this, I thought that the teacher was supposed to be the first teacher's voice you hear. I thought was supposed to be Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he's also talking about physics problem. But I looked it up. It doesn't look like he is. He's at least not credited.
Well, that's upsetting.
I don't really like him.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, it would have been a fun Easter egg.
Yeah, like it did pull me out of it. Like it would be a nice Easter egg. It would be kind of cool if it was him, because he's also a he's probably the most well-known black science popularizer of right now, if ever. I can't really think of any others, but
well, more recently there was the movie Hidden Figures about the female scientists.
Yeah, but they're not popularizers.
Okay, well, because I was going to say, you could argue that the movie sort of helped popularize the idea of women of color in science, but I get what you mean.
Their job wasn't science popularization like,
Okay.
Bill Nye or Carl Sagan or Michio Kaku.
I get what you're understanding, what you're saying.
Yeah. Their job is to disseminate science to the public in a way that the public can understand.
I understand.
And
I get what you're talking about now. Okay.
Like when Neil Tyson first kind of came about, I really liked him. But then the more and more, I think the more popular he got, the less I started to like him, because he's instead of just being like, yeah, science is cool, like there was a couple times where he rags on other things that he really doesn't need to rag on, and sometimes he kind of comes across in a mean way, instead of trying to lift things up, he kind of puts them down. And I'm tired of people doing that. It's really tiresome when that's all, when people think that's what you have to do. But it's still like, when I first heard the voice, I was like, it took me out of it for a second, where I was like, oh, it's like when you hear famous people do either voice acting or when they appear in a movie and you can't see them as anything other than that, as the person, and you're like, wait a second.
First time I saw the Detective Pikachu trailer, and I'm like, that's Deadpool.
The Ryan Reynolds voice coming out of Pikachu was definitely one of those, like, that's Ryan Reynolds, that's not Pikachu.
That's a bit of a shock. It was definitely that's not the voice I expected out of Pikachu.
Yeah. And the class that Miles walks into that we see him, which is probably second class of the day.
Yeah, I thought it was a math class.
It is. So the
Okay.
voiceover and the one he walks into are two different classes, because you can hear this teacher say something slightly, his voice is slightly different. But he's coming into a calculus class.
Okay.
They're doing either integration or derivatives. They're like one in the, they're going in opposite directions, and I never remember which direction is which.
Part of me really was tempted to like sit down and try to figure out the math problems, but I'm like, I don't remember calculus that well.
Yeah, I haven't taken it in, I haven't used calculus in 6 or 7 years.
Same. So it's like, as fun that would be to do me like, and I can tell you, I solved the math problems, but I can't because I didn't do that. I was very tempted though.
What really shocks me is the fact that he's doing calculus, potentially pre-calc, but in 8th grade, which was something we did in like 10th grade. So this is a very advanced class.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is supposed to, like, I've brought up a few times, like, Miles' intelligence. Like, again, they show he's a smart kid. Not the most intelligent kid, but a smart kid. So...
Yeah, he's definitely shown, well,
I
not
wonder
in this
if
minute
this
yet,
is,
but
like, a little hint, like, showing, like, nah, Miles is pretty advanced. Like, he does belong in this school.
Yeah, it's definitely showing that the school is an advanced school, because
For tiny Einsteins.
Algebra at this time. We were still trying to figure out geometry. What's
What
a
is
square?
this? That's a triangle, right?
But
No.
this school is, it's another thing they show. They're not too subtle with that. Hey, this is a smart school.
Yeah, no, it's like, hey, just so we're clear, these kids are smart.
Yeah. And the other thing that was touching on with the students is, or the last thing I want to touch on is the students and the uniforms that they wear.
Okay.
Just because, to tie kind of, one last thing to tie back into the, in schools where you have to wear uniforms, like it's always the kind of like small ways that you can try to like, individualize yourself.
Wearing your shoes and tie.
Yeah.
Although
just
some
different types of
school
shoes.
uniforms will even dictate what shoes you have to wear.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
this one, it seems like they don't, all the students have different types of shoes. It's not just Miles, rebelling in his,
So this is a pretty
sneakers.
lax uniform school, then.
Yeah, it seems like they have, a couple options, because, looking at it, it looks like, for the shoes, they can wear whatever they want. For the guys, they have to wear gray slacks, and then for the women, it seems to be either a plaid skirt. I don't know if I was going to say either a plaid skirt or slacks as well, but I don't know if I actually saw any women in slacks.
I don't think I saw anybody wearing, any of the females wearing slacks either, to be honest.
Yeah, so, skirt, maybe slacks. I don't remember.
Most schools with uniforms do have that option for girls, that you can either wear skirt or slack. Because I think part of the reason they do it more now is depending how tall a girl is or something. Like, some of those skirts won't fit them and be, like, appropriate. The other problem with school uniform skirts is, like, again, to make sure, like, depending where they have to wear the skirt, if they get that strict with it, it can vary on the length. So that's probably why more schools have been giving girls that option of, like, okay, you can wear the skirt or plaid or like pants, or if you wear the skirt, you have to wear tights underneath it as well.
I always figured it was just gender discrimination stuff.
I mean, yeah, some
like,
of that too,
it reminds
but that's
me
a
of
different
the,
topic.
it reminds me of like usually an article, some news story happens once a year or twice a year where either some school in the UK or some school in Australia decided that the boys had to wear slacks during the summer, and it's, like in the upper 80s, upper 90s. And so because the dress code doesn't always dictate gender, well, it doesn't dictate that, like, it's the Airbud rule. It doesn't say in the rules that you can't wear, like, that men can't wear slacks. It just says that there's, need to wear, or sorry, that the men can't wear skirts. It just says that they wear slacks. And so they would come to school wearing the skirts until
That's amazing.
until the administration was like, all right, fine, you can wear shorts to school, because it's really hot outside.
Yeah. And that's, and like that also can, like, even in public schools, some schools have that problem where I know one of the common, what's the word I'm looking for? Complaints, I guess, with the school, clothing policy, the dress code, especially with girls, is that, like, you have to wear a tank, or you either can't wear tanks, or you have to wear
sorry, when you said you can't wear tanks, I just pictured a girl, like, showing up with, like, in like a
like an army
Abrams
tank.
or like a Predator. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm wearing my tank to school, look out.
That would be allowed, because we'd be covered.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care about that. We just have to be... Well, like, I always joke with my friends, like, or you'll see jokes online, it's like, oh, look out, that girl's collarbone is showing. You can't have that. That was an actual dress code rule in middle school for us. Like, girls couldn't wear shirts that exposed their collarbones. It's like, it's a collarbone! So even in public schools, there's definitely some gender discrimination involved with these things. People like to act like there's not. There is.
You don't see guys showing off their collarbones.
Is it distracting, Sean? Are you distracted by collarbones?
Sometimes. What if they're lopsided?
What if they're lopsided? That's a different way to be distracted.
That happens sometimes, Don't shame me just because my collarbones are lopsided. Doesn't mean you gotta go pointing them out. These students do not have to worry about their collarbones being shown off, because they're also wearing, everybody has to wear, a white button up with a blue tie, and a blue jacket on top. But they seem to have the option of, or if they decide not to wear a jacket, then they have the option of wearing a sweater. And so, a lot of actually, I think it's just the girls.
I think the girls have to wear a sweater instead of the blazers.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. What it was in the scene outside, you can see some of the girls wearing jackets, but it looks like those are just jackets.
Normal jackets. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks, so the girls have to wear the sweaters, but thankfully they can wear either they're allowed to wear a sleeveless sweater and have color options. But yeah, it's always interesting to see how strict or how uniform the uniforms are.
Yeah, and again, like, it's interesting that it's both restrictive and not restrictive at the same time, because most of the kids I knew who went to school that had uniforms, even their shoes were regulated when they're not here. So that really is interesting. Do you have anything else for this?
No, that's all I have for this minute.
Okay, same here.
Thank you for listening. Join us again on Wednesday when we come back and see what Miles's classes look like. Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.